Hello, loved ones. I want to tell you of an experience, just one of my experiences. The only reason I am saying this, is putting this on here, is to let you know that yes, He does work in your life. You just have to recognize it. Ask and then recognize. But anyways, back in 99, okay, I met my husband, well, ex-husband, in 89. September 15th was actually our first date. We met in August, but our first date was September 15th, 1989. And he asked me to marry him 2 months later, November 30th, 1989. I got engaged. I was 18 and he was 28. He would have been turning 29 a few weeks later. But anyways, we were engaged for 2 years. We got married July 27th, 1991. And then 3 weeks later, after our wedding, I walked down the aisle 4 days after my 20th birthday. That was the happiest day of my life. 3 weeks later, we got pregnant with our oldest daughter, Nicole. But anyways, we lived at the rectory. Don had lived at the rectory for a year and a half prior to our marriage. He was doing some renovation work, which in return of his paying rent to the priest. And that renovation work it would have took anyone else, a few months to do, but yeah, he was there a year and a half. And that's where we ended up living, was at the rectory. That's where I got pregnant with Nikki. But anyways, okay, I'm gonna say this. Don wasn't a worker. He always said he's never gonna work for anybody because he doesn't want other people getting rich off of his work. He wasn't. I ended up getting a job in a town that was probably, to drive to this town would have been about 15 minutes. It was called Lagoon City. I worked at a hotel and resort. I biked to work every weekend. I worked every Saturday and Sunday for a couple months. I biked there, pregnant, sick, throwing. I couldn't do that we had a car, but well, I had to bike. I couldn't do that anymore. Not with all the morning sickness, all the sickness I was going through. I couldn't do that, so I ended up getting another job, which was in the same town that I lived in. It's called Beaverton, and it was Becker's, and I worked there until I was about 7.5 months pregnant. And nothing was being done. We didn't have any money for the baby needs. We had no money. Even though I worked, my money went to our groceries because I didn't work much. I only worked a few days a week because of the pregnancy. Don didn't work at all, so we didn't have any baby needs. We needed a crib, we needed a car seat, we needed, different things. And so at 7 months pregnant, 7.5 months, we made the decision that we're going to go on welfare. But only, I don't, but only for a few months, only to get what we need. So Nikki was born, and we were able to get her crib and the cars and different things we needed. And when she was 2 months old, we moved. We moved to a different town. It was in Kawartha Lakes. And he still didn't want to work. He still wanted to be on welfare. The only job he actually had was something like 8 weeks during the summer. It was called KST, or Kawartha Summer Theater. He was a carpenter for them. And other than that, he wouldn't get a job. We were on welfare still. Had a baby, and at that time, welfare required for you to fill out a form to show that you were looking for work, and you had to fill out at least 20 places that you've looked for work every month. He refused. He would not. I was the one filling out those things for him. I was the one calling the places up, going to the places, looking for work for my husband. You know what it felt like when they would say, "What experience do you have?" or "How much experience do you have?" And I would have to say, I'm sorry, but I'm actually calling for my husband. He has whatever experience and all that stuff. And right away, they don't want him because they know right there. But anyways, to make a long story short, we were on welfare for 8 years, 3 kids. He wouldn't get off. He wouldn't let us. Finally, in, I believe it was in 98 or 99, his sister Lorelei moved to Alberta, Airdrie, and she would call us. We would talk on the phone sometimes, and she used to say, "Why don't you guys come out here? They're building it up so fast, and Don can work building the homes and as a carpenter and everything." And Don had always said, he always told me for years that he always wanted to move back to Calgary because he lived there after high school when he was about 19. He always told me he wanted to move back. So I went to Don and I was like, I told him the situation and I was excited about it. And he wasn't really, because it would have meant that he would have had to have leave. Let's just say certain girls behind. That's all I'll say about that. And it would have also meant that he would have had to have actually got a job. But I went to my father and I told him the situation, and he's like, Sharon, he says, you want to go out there. They're crying for carpenters out there. And Don is a good carpenter. I will give him credit for that. He is a very good carpenter. He's very precise. But so we talked. Don and I talked again, and we made arrangements. Yes, we went. He bought before that, actually, to let you know, I had 4 jobs at the same time. I was in the military. I was also working at a place called Tony's Best Pizza and Wings. And I was also working at a Chinese buffet restaurant. And also, every Saturday and Sunday during the day, for a while, I had my own setup at a flea market. So my money went to my family. Whatever money Don made went to him. He believed his money was his money. Even though we were married and had a family, his money was his money. So yeah, we're on for 8 years, 3 kids, and he bought a van, an old blue Dodge van with white doors. He actually still has it now, sitting in his garage or out somewhere. But anyways, he bought a van, and then we went to move. And he resented me so bad because of what he had to leave. But it was just, the way he was, it was totally destroying the family. And on our way out there, it took us 6 days to drive to Airdrie. We were always having vehicle trouble. We were always having van troubles. He drove his van, pulling the U-Haul trailer, and I drove my car. I had a Chrysler New Yorker, and so I would follow him, but it took us 6 days. But anyways, we always had to pull over, and so he can do a little tinkering with the van. And I would always tell him, don't worry, it'll be okay. Have faith, it'll be okay. And he totally resented, he hated me for this move. But it was for the better. Otherwise, we would have still been where we were. But this one night, it was just outside, not far from Geraldton, Ontario. It was raining, and we were having trouble with the van. And so we pulled over at this restaurant, and I went in with the kids. We had supper. Don did some tinkering around with the van, and then after he came in, had supper, then after we ate, we all hopped back in the vehicles and we drove to a rest spot. And we stayed there for the night. And as we're driving to that rest spot, I prayed. And I asked God, I says, please, Father, please send us an angel or a mechanic or both And we continued driving, and we got to the rest stop, stayed for the night. And in the morning, we started driving, and we were going past Geraldton, and there was a restaurant on the right-hand side on the highway. So we turned around, and we went back to it for breakfast. And we went in, and we all sat at the table, and we ordered our breakfasts, like pancakes and different things. And this guy came in. I remember him coming in, and he sat by the window table and had a coffee. And when we were finished our breakfast, or when he was finished his coffee, I remember seeing him get up and stand by the counter to pay for his coffee, but there was somebody in front. And so he was standing there very peacefully, very quietly, looking out the window, standing by the counter. And I remember he had a green spring jacket on, he had a baseball cap on. And I got up, I went into the bathroom, went to the washroom, and when I came out, the waitress came up to me and she says, "Do you see that man outside getting into that white car?" And I looked, and I says, "Yeah." It was a brand new, beautiful car, white. I says, "Yeah." He says, or she said, "He just paid for your family's breakfast." And I says, "What? Seriously?" And she said, "Yeah, he came up to the counter. He says, 'Can you keep a secret for 3 minutes?' 3 minutes. And she said, "Yeah." And he says, "I'm going to pay for their breakfast, that family's breakfast." So he did. And he left. And then the waitress told me, the waitress told me, she says, "Did you notice what he was?" No, sorry. I went into the bathroom and I cried. Happy cry. It was a thankful, and I thanked God, because we were having so much money issues, because it took everything. It was taking everything that we had to go out there. And I came back out, and I said, I thank God for that, right? And she says, "Did you notice what he was reading?" And I said, "No, I didn't." She says, "He was sitting at the table drinking his coffee and reading the Bible." And I was just, I cried. The waitress got all teary-eyed. She almost started crying, you know. And this was on Labor Day. This was Labor Day 1999. And I got up with the kids. Don said he's going to use the payphone. There was a payphone there inside. He said he's going to use the payphone and see if there's any mechanics that were open. So I got up, I took the kids outside, let them run around in the parking lot and play, stretch their legs, all that stuff. And a couple came outside, and they said, "Excuse me, but we overheard you and your husband talking about needing a mechanic. You're having vehicle trouble." And I told them the story about how we're from Lindsay, Ontario, and we're moving out to Airdrie, Alberta, and yeah, we're having trouble with the van stopping every so often, and we can't do more than 50 to 60 kilometers an hour and all this stuff. And he says, "Well, my brother-in-law is a mechanic, and he just lives right around the corner." He said, I'll give him a call for you. So he went in and gave him a call, and because there's no garages open on Labor Day, he came back and he says, I talked to him, and he says, you can go to his house. He says, come by his house and he'll have a look. We went by, we thanked him. We went by his house. It was just around the corner in the town. The kids played with his kid, and he worked on the van. And from that point on, the van ran really good. The van ran great. We were able to get up to highway speed and not have any more issues with it. The reason I'm telling this story is because I want you to know that he does work in your life. The night before, I had asked, and I believed everything was going to be okay. I kept believing everything's going to be okay. And I had asked God to please send us an angel or a mechanic or both. The very next morning, he sent us both. And then everything was fine. Everything was good. He sent that man, whether he was an angel in disguise or a man, I honestly don't know, but it was through God. He sent that man and paid for our food, our breakfast. That was God saying, don't worry. You guys are okay. The same place, same restaurant. He sent us our mechanic. Don't give up. When you ask God for something and you don't, you got to keep your eyes open. You got to realize it. Yes, He's answering you, but you have to see when these answers come, you've got to be able to recognize that things, He's there for you. All you need to do is ask Him. Ask Him, believe in Him, have faith, and He will answer. He will answer. I love you guys. And so does God. Jesus died for you. He was born to die for you so that those gates could be open again and you can have His everlasting love. Please. Please accept Him. Please appreciate what He did for you. I've got so many more stories. I'll tell them every now and then. I'll start telling them. Anyways, I love you guys. God bless.